Gadzooks. Yikes. Big yikes. I think lost in the election cycle, and obviously these videos don't do as well, but there's other news to cover, and I owe it to my viewers to not just keep talking about how Kamala Harris stinks every day. I think you guys know. New information came out about maybe the most demonic human being to ever walk the planet. Far worse than Jeffrey ever was. And a lot of questions are being asked, including by myself, specifically why on earth this guy was allowed to operate with impunity for as long as he was. I would say, I don't think, I mean, obviously I don't have evidence of this, so it's just my feelings. But it seems unlikely that nobody knew about this. Now we have a new checklist that he had for the participants in his freak-offs, as well as new claims of just a terrible, terrible thing that he did to someone who is very, very young. And this guy, deserves to be buried under the prison if this stuff is true. I've often said, hey, this guy feels like a burned federal asset. What does that mean? It just means that he was probably a Fed, informing the federal government, and he no longer became useful, and then they arrested him. It's exactly how I feel about Jeffrey. Mr. Jeffrey got a sweetheart deal from the FBI when he was first caught, and then he became too much trouble, too much trouble for them, and so they decided to arrest him. That does not mean that Jeffrey didn't do what they said he did, and that doesn't mean that Diddy didn't do what they said he did. What that means is the federal government, in my opinion, had at least some knowledge of it and allowed it to continue in exchange for something. Whether that's information, whether that's access, whether that's Kamala Harris endorsements completely out of left field from people like Usher who said they weren't political. In my opinion, many people in Hollywood entertainment are assets at some level or another. Some of them don't even know they are. But this stuff is nuts as authorities now launch an interagency operation at the federal jail where he's being housed. Investigators from various agencies launched an interagency operation on Monday at the troubled lockup in New York where he's being held. Investigators at the Bureau of Prisons and Justice Department Inspector General Office and other law enforcement agencies descended upon the Metropolitan Detention Center on Monday. The law enforcement operation is designed to, quote, achieve a shared goal of maintaining a, quote, safe environment for both our employees and those incarcerated. The agency said prison officials declined to provide specific details. I think we know. I mean, I don't need to put a tinfoil hat on to at least say, boy, it sure was a coincidence that the cameras outside of Mr. Jeffrey's cell just happened to not be working the day he decided to take his own life, allegedly. Okay? It is my opinion that there are some shenanigans there. I can't prove it. I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm just saying, boy, there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions. In terms of, how all that stuff happened, how it came to be. Now we're sending in a bunch of people to inspect the prison where he's being held. Gee, I wonder if something terrible might happen to him. Obviously, I have no evidence for that, and I'm not saying that I do, but this prison has long been the subject of a lot of questions. A correction officer was charged with doing some bad stuff, all sorts of stuff. They also have Sam Bankman-Fried there, all this kind of stuff. They have a lot of high-value targets at this prison, so it's entirely possible. You see, those held at the Brooklyn jail have long complained about rampant bad behavior, dreadful conditions, and at the same time, they said they've been subject to frequent lockdowns and have been barred from leaving their cells. Good, it's jail. You would think a high-valued perp would get better protection on the inside until there has been a trial, unless certain people don't want a trial. I don't know. I don't know. It's very curious. Perhaps something very bad is going to happen. Tim, now there's been a list. By the way, is that Lady Gaga? It looks like Lady Gaga here. I'm not totally sure. DiCaprio maybe. This guy, I don't know. These are a bunch of famous people. Diddy Combs had a list of requirements about the weight and appearance of women allowed to attend his, quote, freak-off sessions. The disgraced music mogul has said to enforce a strict 140-pound weight limit on guests to his infamous parties. The source told the New York Post other stipulations, including that the women be, quote, young and hot, and also be wearing revealing clothing. We will do a weigh-in if necessary. An organizer who said they worked with the start of 2004 and 2005. The girls had to be young and hot, so I always had a scale nearby in case I needed to make sure. The number was 140 pounds, but if the girl was really tall, there was a little bit of discretion involved. Other requirements included no flab, no cellulite, no overly pierced or tattooed, no short hair, the source added. Well, I thought he liked the short hair. Lawyer Tony Busby said that he represents 120 people who are filing lawsuits against the star, accusing him of terrible crimes. The freak-off organizer claimed that Diddy never asked the ages of those involved. It was don't ask, don't tell at the time. I was really young myself, and I honestly couldn't. I really thought we should be asking their age because of just drinking laws. I never stayed out around for these events, and I had no idea that the girls were expected to hook up with people. I disagree. I'm sure that you had at least some idea. I'm sure that you knew. No pants, no jeans, no flat shoes. Every girl had to wear a party dress, preferably very short, just enough to cover the cheeks, but longer than mid-thigh, but no longer than mid-thigh, and have lots of cleave. I mean, this is some very, very strict rules. Every single one of them had to be wearing stilettos. That one, there was no exception. High stilettos. Another source described a shady offer she received to go back to Diddy's home after she performed at the rapper's VMA after party. I didn't go, the dancer said, who was 20 at the time, but other girls did, and then they wouldn't really talk about what happened. She claims that she was paid $250 for the dance performance and offered an additional $1,000 to go back to his home. It was previously reported that he had had many of his quote-unquote freak-off parties around major events. Well, yeah. I mean, no kidding. I mean, I don't think... Look, again, I think I talked about this on the live the other day, maybe with Hannah Claire at 1 Eastern. I expected. I've not heard anything, when we were talking about the various, people that have participated in these parties with him, I was not under any delusions whatsoever that Hollywood people were degenerate. Music industry people were degenerate. I had no issue at all understanding that. It's their life. They're adults. I also believe, again, it is also in my opinion, that many of these people who happen to be suing now were probably there willingly. They were probably there participating willingly, and now they're trying to cash in. I don't know that for a fact. That's just my opinion. But, I mean, you have this list. You're a woman or a man, and you subject yourself to clothing requirements, weight requirements, wearing revealing clothing at these parties, and you think, boy, this is probably normal. And you go in anyway. A lot of these people are adults. But now, someone who was 10 has levied a claim. Somebody who was on the Making the Band show with him. The other suit claims he also did it to someone else who was, too young. Again, these people were apparently asked, don't you want to be famous? I mean, yikes. I mean, there is no way this guy's ever seen the light of day. The sheer number of lawsuits being levied against him. Now, this is for sure the second time it's been somebody practically in the single digits of age. All these 20, 25, 18, 19, 20-year-old chicks, I expect knew what they were getting into. If you want if there's some sort of evidence that they were forced to do anything against their will, okay, I'll hear it. But all these women coming out of the woodwork now to sue him, I think they knew exactly what they were getting into. Now, there's a different, more sinister, part of this when you're talking about people who are very young. People, in the single digits who are now suing him. 120. This is wild. 25 people, by the way. Apparently, there's a list of 25 people who are too young to be participating in these type of events. 25 alone were too young to participate. Now, were they all 17 and 364 days? I don't know. But 25 of them, this list of, this is demonic. This is absolutely insane. The question is, how many of these are real? If they're all real, yikes, we may have maybe the most deviant individual ever. How many of these people were there willingly and suddenly deciding they don't want to do that anymore? Where are all the tapes? It's just like Jeffrey. Oh, he's got tapes. He's got tapes. Never saw one. One never came up in evidence. His madam is in prison for providing, people to absolutely nobody because there's nobody on that list. If you have 120 plus people suing Diddy, how come we haven't seen a single list? We haven't seen a single name of a single person named other than him. You mean to tell me that he was the only one taking advantage of these people? I doubt that. So until I get names of people who are participating in these events, until I get names and not just lawsuits asking for money, it's going to be interesting. But this thing is spiraling very quickly out of control for him. And I in my opinion, doesn't make it to trial. Let me know what you think in the comments.